Welcome back, everyone. So we will continue with designing for the web. So this is the last part that we will touch with regards to technologies uh, uh, and designing the details of its interface. The advent of the World Wide Web was initially both a boon and a curse for interaction designers. For perhaps the first time since the invention of graphical user interfaces, corporate decision makers began to understand and adopt the language of user-centered design, and the term user experience came into vogue among businesses executive far and wide. On the other hand, the limitations and challenges of web interactivity, which are a result of its historical evolution, set back interaction design by nearly a decade. When the first edition of this book was published in August 1995, the web was just beginning to engage from its root in its academic and scientific computing. At that time, the web was really only good for publishing and reading text documents that had a few links and inline images, form elements, and were introduced in HTML 2.0 a few months later. When the second edition of this book was published in 2003, the consumer and enterprise web, including corporate intranets, had come into being and survived a major industry implosion a few years earlier, but was still highly limited in terms of interactivity. There were a strong convention for navigation and basic data entry, but doing anything more sophisticated was miracle. Even following the dot-com bust, the promise of the web was apparent to everyone. The industry was flooded with fresh design school graduates and traditional graphic designer and young enthusiasts who saw the web as an exciting and lucrative opportunity to create compelling communication and commerce through the new form of interactive visual expression. The biggest challenge involved working around the severe limitation of the medium. Creating a user experience with even rudimentary level of interactivity as well as visual and logical organization was a real challenge for early web designers. But by the time the third edition of About Page came out in 2007, more powerful web technologies had come into common use. Things such as HTML5, CSS3, and Ajax had enabled the rise of rich internet applications. This featured much more sophisticated UI capabilities, including drag and drop, the ability to stream data into UI elements, and much more robust screen structuring capabilities. Browser-based user interfaces were starting to approach parity with many native desktop capabilities, but in many areas of the industries, Microsoft.NET Native Windows application were still the dominant paradigm for software creation and delivery. As we published the fourth edition of About Face in 2014, the landscape has largely changed. With the rise of GitHub, the open source movement has created an impressive body of highly sophisticated HTML user interface components that are highly capable and largely interoperable, such as Bootstrap and jQuery ecosystems. Thanks to investment by companies such as Google and Apple, web browsers' ability to quickly render and process HTML and JavaScript has become very effective, and the deeper plumbing of the web stack has also become highly capable. Deploying software-based experiences over the web has many advantages. It allows for continuous deployment and therefore continuous improvement. Network-based application can be much better suited to the social and collaborative way we live and work, and we can accommodate much more transient, grazing usage. Installing software and keeping it up to date is a commitment we don't always want people to have to make in order to interact with their product or service. All of this adds up to a situation where there are very few experiences that a designer can dream up that can't be built to perform in a modern day web browser. it increasingly becoming the case that we are building native applications only to support sophisticated authoring tools. For example, graphic design, 3D modeling, video editing, presentation, and code editors. So those are the use for this desktop app because the other functionalities of basic app has been translated to web application instead of desktop application. Furthermore, the web has become the most important and popular channel that people use to communicate and that companies use to interact with their customers. This means that the quality of web experiences is incredibly important, and the increased ability to deliver complex behavior in a browser demands application quality interaction design. The visual designer focus on look and feel, and the information architects focus on content structure are sufficient to create effective and engaging user experiences with this new generation of the web. It is not easy to browse GitHub for ready coded UI components that include many interaction design friendly features, such as rich visual modeless feedback. But even with all these rich capabilities, we are still left with important questions of exactly what will suit the needs and desires of people interacting with a product or service and how to create a coherent, useful experience from these building blocks. In many ways, it's difficult to generalize about designing for the web because it has become a huge place. In different tabs in the same browser window, you might be looking at mass media, enterprise software, e-commerce, and social networking sites. Even though people clearly have different expectations for different kinds of web experiences, they must rely on convention to orient themselves to each website or application they arrive at, especially those they may be seeing for the first time or may visit only occasionally. While these conventions are constantly evolving, they're also largely tied to the nature of the medium. They're important for the interaction designer to consider when creating a browser-based experience. Page, uh, Page-based interactions, the fundamental character of the medium that is the web, is shaped in a huge way by the concept of the page. From its inception, the whole technology has been formed around pages. So instead of views, it was formed around pages. Navigation and wayfinding. So just like an organization of functions are as a way to enhance wayfinding, one way of thinking about it is that native application usually has a limited number of spaces or modes that the user can be in, and different pieces of content can populate each of those spaces or modes. So the desktop application has more limited, though it has a lot of modes that could be presented in different or populated in different content. Uh, the browser-based web application is more limitless, so it provides different views or modes because you can drag and drop in different parts of the tab. So on the other hand, on the web, each piece of content typically has its own place, or rather URL, and the trick is figuring out how to help people to get the content they want. So you need to be more structured because you have a lot more data and content. In the early days of the commercial web, people designing and building websites recognized that a new design issue resulted from supporting numerous hyperlink pages. The challenge of organizing and structuring content across pages in a meaningful way. A new breed of designer, the information architect, built a discipline and practice to address the non-visual design problems of logical structure and flow of content. So it's actually not focused on the feel and the look, but rather in the organization of information. The web experiences typically are constructed of numerous diverse pages with some sort of logical organization. Also has given interaction designers the challenge of creating meaningful interactions related to navigation. So since it's different pages with some sort of logical organization between pages, uh, it still require the interaction designer to consider the needs of the user. So that's the fundamental fact that won't change. We need to have a goal-directed design. Primary navigation. So for this navigation and wayfinding, we have primary navigation to organize the functions, and secondary navigation and beyond, which we will discuss shortly. Since the early days of the commercial web, the term primary navigation has signified how the user gets to the major areas or section of a website or application. For some time, almost every website and application has included persistent links along the top or left side. So it's like the top bar on the mobile app. The top navigation is a superior approach in most cases, see figure 20.1. So Basecamp illustrates the common practices of placing primary navigation on the top of the page, because it's also a transient application, just like in app, where the sometimes the top and bottom bar are better instead of the drawer, is where the transient or very transient application are used. So the way to do it is to put the navigation, the primary navigation, on the top. Top navigation is a superior approach in most cases, see figure 20.1. Side navigation makes the page crowded and occupies the page visual entry point, forcing the users to scan past it to read content. So a side navigation, this is distracting because it forces the user to read through it, just to read the main content. That's why this top navigation is effective. The biggest limitation of top navigation, that it can accommodate only a few items of limited length, may actually be one of its greatest benefits, forcing designers to reduce the number of major areas of a website or application and to keep the title short and punchy. Usually has a better chance of resulting in something that is comprehensible and helpful to users. So a short it makes the website or web application more comprehensible, because it forced the designer to make it short. As with most rules of thumb, there are exceptions. If you have a large heterogeneous content space, reducing to items that can fit on a horizontal bar can result in a navigation terms that are meaninglessly abstract to users. If you have a large content, then fitting it on a horizontal bar will result in a navigational terms that are meaningless and abstract to users, because you need to provide like more if you have like this large content, because the users need more details. The biggest advantage of left side navigation are that items can be longer, there can be more of them, and they are easier for user to scan because they are left aligned. Amazon, which is well known for using analytics to optimize its page designs and which sells almost everything known to man, currently use left-hand navigation for product categorization on some pages. So it uses this at as a primary navigation for some pages, because it has a lot of complex details that needs that side panels for user to understand. But on every page except the home page, this navigation is hidden. So except the home page, this navigation is hidden until the user mouse over show by department to reveal it. So you need to hover the mouse to reveal that side panel, which is better for large information web application. So figure 20.2 uses an Amazon approach to side navigation, where it is displayed to the user on the home page but requires a mouse over to access on all other page. This brings us to another important topic in web design: dynamically hiding and showing navigation controls that depend on the user location in the system and even where he or she is on the page. So the one of the principle is dynamically hiding and showing the navigation controls such as this, because the reason why it was not available before is because of that dynamic uh, modal box, or hiding of navigator control that depends on the user's page is not available before. But now, because of the innovation of this dynamic modal dialog, we are allowed to do it. An increasingly popular and successful pattern is to keep this top navigation bar locked to the top of the browser window when the user scrolls. So if it's locked, it has provide consistency, just like how the bottom bar of the Yelp disappear when you scroll down. You should put this, sorry, just like the bottom bar of the art app we saw in iPad earlier, which has a slider to change the contrast. This top bar is locked so that when the user scroll, it can still see it. An increasingly popular and successful pattern is to keep top navigation bar locked to the top of the browser window when the user scrolls. Branding and other elements are minimized so that the bar takes up less screen real estate and visual attention as the user engages with content lower down the page. So other elements are actually minimized so that the bar takes up less uh, screen real estate. So the branding and other elements will disappear on the top bar uh, to minimize the screen real estate and visual attention as the user engages with content lower than the page. Usually it is used for infinite scrolling content. The header of Google Plus is persistent but make itself smaller. Here, when you you have this option, but here it will be small because you only see notification now, not this, not search, only the top navigation bar as the user engage with content lower than the page. When considering the best approach for primary navigation, it's important to consider people using mobile browsers. If this is a vital platform for you, and in this day and age, in most cases, it should be. Make sure you think through how well your navigation works on smaller screens. One common and utilitarian approach is not to show the navigation persistently. So you should remove this persistent top bar and to reveal it only when the user click a menu or a hamburger icon control. Three stock horizontal lines. So design principle, use persistent headers to maintain context of the content. Secondary navigation and beyond. Often the entire information of space of an application or suite of application cannot be meaningfully navigated to form a handful of top-level links. So if it's a suite of application, if a large application, it cannot be meaningfully navigated for just a few links that you can click on that top navigation bar, even though you or left side bar, even though users will almost certainly search past this point, the content may bear secondary level of persistent navigation and perhaps additional levels beyond that. So even though users will almostly search past that, they could use search query. The content may bear a secondary levels of persistent navigation to help with the primary. Expert users of sovereign application may be able to memorize navigation paths 3 or more layers deep. But in our experience, most intermediate or novice users struggle to find information if it's buried in a 3-level hierarchy. While good search mechanism may mitigate the problem, it's best to try to keep your navigation space as flat and compact as possible to make it easier for user to create a useful mental model of how your application is organized. So again, you're creating mental model of the how the application works. So you need to remove the three-level hierarchy in the secondary level navigation. There are several basic yet effective mechanisms for secondary and additional levels of navigation. You can add a left-hand menu or a second stripe of horizontal navigation links. If you're using this approach for your primary navigation, see figure 20.4. Room and Board's website using a classic left-hand secondary navigation to access sub-pages in a major section of the site. So here, the major section, like this, when you click this office, you'll get the major section, and then there's a secondary or left-hand secondary navigation to access sub-pages within that category. But it is you can add a left-hand menu like this. So in web pages or web application, we actually add menu compared to desktop application or mobile phones, or a second stripe of horizontal navigation and link if you're using this approach for your primary navigation. Or if this is your primary navigation, you can put an arrow there as another horizontal navigational link to provide second level navigation. So a useful approach to secondary navigation is fat navigation. When the user clicks the primary navigation, it expands to reveal a much larger set of content areas of choices. So kind of like a drawer, but it's still limited on two hierarchy. This type of navigation can be effective because it flows naturally from interaction the user may have with primary navigation, such as this. When you click the description, it shows it, and because it is modal and temporary, it can be much more generous with the amount of space it uses. So you can allow more details on this second level navigation. To better reinforce the user's mental model of site organization, it's important to provide persistent feedback about where he or she is currently is, regardless of the depth of your navigation structures. Two common ways to do this are through visual feedback in the navigation elements themselves and through breadcrumbs. A sequence of links that represents the user's path through the site hierarchy. So the technique to do this are breadcrumbs. Through visual two common ways through visual feedback in the navigation elements themselves and through breadcrumbs. So you can do this to reinforce the second navigation by rich modeless feedback through animation and through breadcrumbs such as the click path, a sequence of links that presents the user path through the site hierarchy. So here in figure 20.6, here you can see the breadcrumbs, desk, forge tables. When you're looking at the page for a desk on the Room and Board website, you can see where you are in the site and navigate back up using the breadcrumbs. On some sites, clicking each breadcrumb step opens a pop-up menu of lateral links, enabling users to navigate more easily to different parts of the site hierarchy without as many clicks. So featured borrowed from recent Windows OS file browser interfaces. So design principle, breadcrumbs with lateral links help speed navigation. Content navigation. So again, breadcrumbs, when you click that, sometimes some of the apps allows you to really go back on that link instead of just providing the text. Content navigation, another important type of navigation is the navigation of content such as photos and articles. These items, so aside from text or the primary navigation menu and secondary, the another key way we search for this is navigation of articles and photos. So these are the main contents in web applications. These items often are numerous and subject to change, and the relationship between them are often associative rather than strictly linear or hierarchical. hierarchical, just like the sorting and filtering controls in mobile app. These facts create a number of navigation challenge and patterns. Most commonly, items are presented in listings of some sort, sequences of headlines and blurs for articles. So sequence of headlines, again, list, we use the list, so that's how lists are so useful. We still use list here for this changing content, and galleries for photographs. So for article, we use list and galleries for photographs, which are also used in mobile apps. Contemporary designs for these listings are often inspired by the feed format. So the design for this are inspired by the mobile app feed format by Facebook, popularized by blogs and social media like Twitter and Facebook. The audience, it's also useful to highlight featured content to the audience. This can be done by using more prominent typography, by changing the size and position on the page, or by using a carousel that cycles through features in a more visual format. So another key in content navigation is to highlight featured content, right? As you see in the carousel. So this can be done using more prominent typography, changing the font, changing the size, the position on the page, or by using a carousel that cycles through features in a more visual format, and providing rich modeless feedback as well to highlight it. It is common for content to be organized in multiple ways, such as by topic, author, or date published, to minimize the search excise, just like in a phone. But here we can actually provide more sophisticated input, but it's still sometimes it's still better to have this sorting by topic, author, or filtering by topic, author, and date published. And for users to want to use one or more of those organization schemes to find content they are looking for. In these cases, it can be desirable to expose multiple navigation schemes to browse content, or make use of the faceted search techniques that we discussed in the previous video. Searching. So another key ways to present information and important topic aside from content, primary and secondary navigation is searching. One of the most important navigation methods on the web is searching. From our observation in a number of studies, it's clear that although search algorithms continue to improve, most people are not very good at forming queries to find what they're looking for. The idea that Google has somehow trained people to search instead of using navigation is largely untrue. What this means is that an effective search pattern for your website or application should help users go from their initial search term to a page that contains what they're looking for. So the key here is that providing your user that initial step if they are searching for a complex hierarchy in your database, and then point them towards what content they are looking for. There are a number of good strategies for doing this. Sometimes using several of them in succession helps audience find what they're looking for. The things that we've discussed, like autocomplete, recent searches, auto suggestion, auto I forgot that, but those are the techniques that we've discussed earlier is applicable here. So these strategies and their variants in the context of mobile apps, but these contexts apply equally well on the web, as we'll see here. One of the most successful innovation in searching has been autocomplete, also known as type ahead. When the user type in his or her search terms. A number of search choices for complete search terms are presented. This can be based on previous searches, as Google does, or actual results. The Spotlight search function in Apple OS autocomplete greatly increases the chance that the user will enter a search term that is likely to have meaningful result. See figure 20.7. Google searches autocomplete provide a list of expanded search term based on what the user has already typed into the search field. This ambiguation or auto-suggest is another tool Google has normalized as part of searching. As you can see in figure 20.8, if the searcher types a word, so again this is a web application of Google. It uses this search techniques on its content management. If the searcher types a word that is spelled similarly to a more commonly searched word, or more often mistypes or misspell the word they really meant to search for, Google displays a list of suggestions along with the results. It also provides a link to the top suggestion as part of the result. So here, Google searches also support autosuggest, which provide a list of searches terms based on fuzzy matching based on what the user has typed, in essence allowing the search box to autocorrect spelling errors. Autocomplete, auto-suggestion, auto-faceted search help users find things faster. That said, even the user form his search term in a productive way, he still may have a large number of items to look through. This is where faceted search, which allow users to specify attributes of the item they are looking for, can be really useful. So that being said, that search may not be able the user to find what they're looking for. This faceted search, like boiling down into categories or attributes, will help the user search. And these attributes searching is the key, as in the next video as well, in organizing our database to help the user get their information faster. So this attribute based searching is very powerful in this technology. So allowing users to narrow their search in a structured way helps them form a query that specifies precisely what they're looking for. An effective faceted search mechanism should provide users some visibility into characteristics of the set of items that they are searching, as well as give them an ideas about how to make the result set small enough to efficiently find the desired item. So here you can see you can filter by price, features, category, and you can know how to filter it small enough to efficiently find the desired item. It's still helping your user navigate from initial search or the finding of available options, because usually for finding things you have available options available. So sometimes always doing that for anything in a wide variety of possible data in a web search, using autocomplete is not gonna boil down the search effectively. So this type of organization could be better, or a lot better, because it broadens the options tremendously. So Yelp provides effective faceted search mechanism, allowing users to quickly fine-tune a search. Categorized suggestion is yet another method for speeding user to relevant result when a search term is applicable across many categories or domains. So the search term, like this, books, you can choose in different categories in the search term. So that's a categorized suggestion. This is achieved by the system offering a list of suggestions, each of which scopes the search to a particular category. So now you're boiling down into more fine-tuned category. So here, there's still a lot of option, because the more we fine-tune the search, the better. because the list of options are boiled down to a few. So this is achieved by the system offering a list of suggestions, each of which scopes the search to a particular category. Amazon, with its dozen of retail department, makes good use of categorized suggestion. So Amazon figure 20.10 makes good use of categorized suggestion in its main search box, which allows both explicit scoping via drop-down to the left of the search field and categorized suggestion once you start typing. Scrolling, one of the most obvious yet significant features of the page-based web experience is the prevalence of scrolling. Screen or view-based native experience often have a fixed screen layout with multiple panes, so that the layout of each view is fixed, unlike with the page-based, which could have different layout and then could have different panes in each page. Although each of them may have scrolling content, it's also almost always good design in a native application to have a key functions persistently available, because you want to provide context and then flow. Don't want to disrupt flow on the key functions. Even though but it's different in web applications. Even though people are used to seeing a document, they're editing a scroll, they most likely be surprised and dismayed if the toolbar scrolled along with it. So if they're editing some document, such as in authoring tools like Word, they will be surprised if the toolbar scrolled as well. But in a web application, that's normal. Web designers have long been concerned about the fold, the vertical position on the page below which content isn't visible upon page load. So the fold is actually the vertical position on the page below which content isn't visible upon page load. So sometimes there's a main content, and then below that there's a vertical position on the page which content isn't visible because it's not loaded yet. But now it's not as concerned today, because there's actually a server-side rendering now, which you load the entire application on a first request. However, the rapid rise in number of touchscreen interaction and things like Apple's Magic Trackpad have made scrolling much more natural and expected than it used to be with feedless scroll bars. Also, with web experiences, on the other hand, critical information and functions often must be accessed through scrolling. So critical function must be accessed through scrolling compared to rich web desktop application. Furthermore, the growth in using mobile devices to access web content has given rise to the importance of responsive design, in which a web page is designed to format itself appropriately for the size of the user screen. More on this next section, because this responsiveness narrows content areas or content panes on smaller screen. It's much more challenging to try to control what fits on the screen or goes above the fold. So you don't know what's the content or page loaded once the website is requested before, because there's no server-side rendering before. The result of all of this is that one of the most important aspects of successful web design is to engage the user to progress through content or functionality as he or she scrolls down a page. So you want to provide functionality as you scroll. That's why you maintain the top navigation bar, the content, searching, content navigation, primary, secondary. You want to provide it as you scroll, unlike in Toolpalay in the desktop application, because you want the user to scroll at the bottom and read all the contents in the article. So this doesn't apply only to editorial type content, but also to more highly interactive capabilities. One example is the popular parallax effect, in which different on-screen elements respond to the user scrolling at different speed. So an element that respond to different speed of user scrolling. Much of enterprise software is catching up with the era of touch interaction. Nevertheless, nevertheless, there is a real opportunity to create more seamless, engaging interaction by bringing together content and interactive elements that traditionally have been broken into numerous pages and put them into a longer scrollable page. So, a design principle make scrolling an engaging experience. If you are to provide this type of web application, one method is to create an effective visual rhythm through the use of white space and a strong typography. So you're providing white space as a good visual color. You also should be generous with font and color sizes to improve usability for touch user and to improve scannability when the user scroll in mobile screen. It's also important to help users stay oriented as to where they are on the page, such as providing the scroll bar at the right side. The NES website figure 20.11 is structured as number of long scrolling pages. For example, the Life with NES page is a timeline of how NES programmed itself over time. And as the user scrolls down, the primary navigation dock to the top of the page, and there are visual cues as to what the user is looking at. So there's a visual cue on what when we so when you scroll down, there's a visual code that 112. So that's the rich most modest feedback you want to provide for this scrolling, because usually for web application you want the user to scroll till the bottom to your footer as a sign that you successfully created a interactive web application. Even though it makes sense to let a single unit of content scroll on a single long page, some sites still divide it across several pages. The reason for this most often seem not to be about minimizing either vertical scrolling or page load size, but rather maximizing ad revenue from the multiple loads. If the content is finite, paginating it makes finding, saving, and using the content a more convoluted task. So it's harder to find it if it's paginated. If it's just a few pages, even with print functions. Pagination makes sense only for very long lists of similar elements such as search result or news articles. That's why the pagination of Google search are applied to google.com. So the header and footer. An obvious and usually important characteristic of the scrolling is the top and bottom of the page are special places with unique opportunities to improve user flow. The top, often called the header, can be the first thing the user sees when he arrives on a page. The header almost always include a brand element like a logotype. So it's like the brand attribute that they want the company to emphasize, like what we've talked in the previous video, and some persistent navigation items, including the primary navigation discussed earlier. So the header could include the brand element like a logotype and the persistent navigation item. In many cases, we intentionally bring the most important content below the header to the forefront, allowing the header to recede into the background a bit. The header is also commonly the place where a website or application tells the user whether he or she is signed in. So the header also show if it's logged in. Finally, the search function often resides in the header as well. In many cases, we intentionally bring the most important content below the header to the forefront, allowing the header to recede into the background a little bit. So you want the header to kind of recede or hide to focus on the main content. Another effective use of the footer makes it a great place to suggest Whether the user should go next, often to related content, because user viewed all the content that came before it on the page, only if you're lucky and wise about your UI development. Another effective use of the footer is for persistent access to more rarely visited areas of your site application, like legal notices, or for a complete fat navigation that includes all top level and second level pages. See figure 20.12. So the fast footer on Zappos.com contains a condensed sitemap as well as other social and promotional content and links. So the footer actually is a sitemap where all the pages on the site are included. So this can certainly be effective approach, but it's important to consider the circumstances under which your user may need to access these links and whether you imagine they'll be web savvy enough to scroll to the bottom of the page to look for them. Paging versus infinite scrolling. One important scrolling related pattern in things like social media streams and search results is commonly called infinite scrolling. As the user scrolls down the page populates more results into the bottom. This is in contrast to the paging of results, in which predefined number of results are shown on a page, and navigational links are supplied so that the user can advance to the next or previous page. So when navigating in pagination, it's actually a link that allows you to go on the next page on the sitemap, as well as typically the beginning or end of the results, so that you can go to the end of the results easily instead of scrolling it. So it's faster if it's an infinite, or to an arbitrary page of results. You can also change that using the URL if you know the format of the URL of the web application, such as if there's a /6, you know you're in the page 6. So design principle, infinite scroll, and site footer are mutually exclusive idioms. It's important to remember that if you implement infinite scrolling, your users will never get to the bottom of the page and therefore will never see the page footer. Infinite scrolling and page footers are mutually exclusive navigation idioms. Furthermore, infinite scrolling can introduce the other potential usability challenges, so it should be used judiciously. Keyboard and screen reader navigation typically does not work well, if at all, with infinite scrolling, leading to accessibility issues. So, the keyboard is and screen reader for accessibility actually does not work in infinite scrolling. Unless carefully designed and implemented, infinite scrolling may not retain its place in the list after use of the browser back button and subsequent use of the forward button to return. So, unless you're tech savvy, if you go back and then forward again, you will not go back to the previous infinite list page. So this can take users off guard and can lead to laborious and frustrating experience of scrolling to find the lowest item. Again, these are just minimizing the searchability of things. So as you can see, guys, all of this are just minimizing the navigational exercise, as discussed in the previous book as well. So the inability to page directly and predictably to items far down in the list makes infinite scrolling most appropriate for contexts such as news feeds, where information far down in the list quickly loses its relevancy, and browsing recent items is the primary activity. So it's only applicable for contexts such as newsfeed, where information far down the list, so it's actually using list, it loses its relevancy because you're primarily scrolling for the new news. Infinite scrolling should never be employed for interfaces in which users need to get to the end of the list quickly or need to return to a particular list item after navigating elsewhere. The mobile web, the contemporary approach for handling these different screen sizes is commonly called responsive design. This method involves creating a modular layout grid in which content areas flexibly resize up to a point. At key screen widths called breakpoints, this grid may make more substantial changes. So actually, this method involves creating a modular layout grid. So it actually uses grid in the end, in which content areas or the main content area resize up to a point. depending on the device it detected. At key screen widths called breakpoints, this grid may make more substantial changes. For example, for screen greater than 1024 pixel wide, we might choose to show 3 data visualizations side by side on a page. So if it's greater than 1024, you might choose to show the 3 data visualizations side by side. So here, since you have 3 panes, but where this when the screen is less than 1024 pixel wide, the data visualization stack on top of each other. So here you stack it this. Sometimes you have 2 panes, and then sometimes you stack it here. You first the small pane second, and then next is here. So the Boston Globe VESEP is a good example of a site that makes use of responsive techniques. So the Boston Globe VESEP has several different breakpoint screen widths that change how the content is flowed and accessed on a desktop, tablet, or phone. The future, as web technologies become more robust and browsers continue to their trajectory toward providing richer interaction patterns, the browser will continue to be one of the most important UI platforms. So again, it's just a UI platforms to access the back end. It's just a GUI, like an innovation with the GUI as well. Browsers are likely to improve their local data caches, breaking down one of the last remaining differences between locally installed native applications and applications that run in a browser window. As the web and traditional media like TV and print continue to converge, we see many possibles for new content models, new ways of telling stories, and new ways for people to interact with the media. So next videos, we will discuss this rethinking data entry storage, data entry, storage, and retrieval. Rethinking data entry, and then the longest is the rethinking data storage. So this is where we will discuss the data or attributes based searching. Again guys, thank you for watching. See you on the next video.